Atlanta Press Club Debates 2008, the race for the 1st Congressional District, is brought to you from Georgia Public Broadcasting. Here's the moderator for tonight's debate.
Good evening. I'm Tina Tyus Shaw, an anchor for WSAV in Savannah, and welcome to our 2008 election campaign debates originating from the studios of GPB. This debate is organized by the Atlanta Press Club. We also welcome the audience of GPB's statewide radio network, which is simulcasting this debate, and our online audience at gpb.org. Now let's meet the candidates facing each other in the election for the 1st Congressional District. They are, in alphabetical order, Bill Gillespie, a retired U.S. Army colonel who served in Iraq, and Jack Kingston, the Republican incumbent for the 1st Congressional District. Well, here now is the format for tonight's debate. In the first round, each candidate will answer 2 questions from our 3 panelists. In the second round, the candidates will ask each other 2 questions apiece. And in the third round, the panelists will continue questioning the candidates. Finally, each candidate will have 30 seconds to make a closing statement. Before we get started, let's meet our 3 panelists selected by the Atlanta Press Club. First, we have Brandon Larrabee, a reporter for Morris News. Next is Ben Young, associate publisher for Georgia Trend. And our third panelist is Dan Chapman, a reporter with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Now let's get started with the debate. In the first round, each candidate will be asked 2 questions by our panelists. The candidates have 60 seconds to answer each question. And by random selection, Jack Kingston gets the first question from Brandon Larrabee.
Congressman Kingston, you voted against the bailout bill twice, but Senators Saxby Chambliss and Johnny Isakson, both Republicans, voted for the measure. And Senator Chambliss said of his opponent, Jim Martin, who didn't support the bailout, that he was, quote, in favor of sticking his head in the sand, allowing the stock market to tank like it did. Was Senator Chambliss's criticism of Jim Martin accurate? And if so, how are your votes against the bailout bill any different?
Well, I can say this, Brandon, if you look at what's happened to the stock market since the passage of the bailout, it didn't exactly turn things around. And I think that's very important for people to realize. I voted against the bailout for 3 reasons. Number one, there was no reform in it. It was federal government policies that encouraged risky loans and easy money. Some of these things were no documentation, low documentation. Some had 110% of the house value. I mean, that's common sense. We should not have federal government policies pushing that. There was no reform in that of those policies. We should have got to the root of the problem. I have found in Washington, when you divide when the horse and the cart come out of the barn at the same time, they never quite get reunited. Secondly, look at the money that was involved, $700 billion and then another $150 billion in port barrel spending on it, in addition to mental health parity. All this stuff maybe should be debated, but it should not be on an emergency bailout economic package.
All right, moving on now. Ben Young, you may ask your question for Bill Gillespie.
Bill, you've suggested that you would be more aggressive in trying to procure federal funding for the military bases in South Georgia. You've also proposed an 18-month pull out of Iraq. Can you elaborate on what kind of plans you have for the funding that you seek?
Well, first off, I've spent 23 years in the military, 20 of it on active duty. I am an Iraqi combat veteran. I was there. I have spent most of my time at bases in Georgia. My last big duty assignment was at Fort Stewart. What has happened is when you take care of the defense industry, that does not trickle down to taking care of the soldier and the military families. When I moved to Fort Stewart in 2000, it was probably the worst post I have ever seen in terms of family housing, office space. Mr. Kingston has a reputation of being able to take care of the veterans. Well, I don't think that's true. Colonel Sanders was a great man that took care of the chicken industry, but he wasn't very good for the chickens. This man has done a great job taking care of the defense industry, but that hasn't trickled down to the soldier. A soldier voting for Jack Kingston is like a chicken voting for Colonel Sanders. We can do better. I have been endorsed by many different veterans organizations, and we can do better.
We're going to move right along now to Dan Chapman, and your question to Jack Kingston, please.
Thank you. Congressman, let's talk the so-called war on terror. Your opponent has called for an 18-month withdrawal to get all troops out of Iraq. I wonder if you think that is a wise policy, if not what you think we should do, and then what sort of time frame. And then further, your opponent has also said that Afghanistan is the real war on terror. Your thoughts on that also?
Well, I think there's three legs to success in Iraq. Number one is making sure the Iraqi military is up strong enough for us to pass the baton to them. We've trained about 600,000 of their troops. General Lynch told me in July when the 3rd Infantry got back that more and more of the frontline issues were handled by Iraqi soldiers with the 3rd Infantry in the back, and they had great success. As you know, it's been well proven in terms of the surge. So, training their military so that we can step back. That's number one. Number two, economic development, helping them rebuild their infrastructures, the oil revenues, the power plants, the roads, so that small businesses can come back and people can start working. And then number three, the political process, making sure their government is ready for the baton to be passed to them. That is happening in Iraq. Now, General Petraeus is now moving on to Afghanistan and using that same model. We have, as you know, Marines going there now, and then in January there will be 3,400 more soldiers. We need to train them. We're going to double the size of the Iraqi army within 5 years. We're investing money in their infrastructure, and we're attacking their poppy trade. And so we're moving in the right direction.
Your time is up, Congressman Kingston. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to complete round one with a final question, and that comes from Brandon Larrabee. You may ask that question to Bill Gillespie.
Mr. Gillespie, as Dan just noted, you've called for withdrawing from Iraq within 18 months. But if the Joint Chiefs of Staff or the CIA were to approach you and suggest that doing so could lead to a civil war or a failed state, would you still support such a plan?
Well, listen, I'm the soldier. I'm the one that actually served in Iraq. Whether you believe it or not, this was a war of choice, and there were a lot of political decisions in this. When I was one of the commanders on the ground, nobody listened to me. So I'm very happy that we are going to listen to the commanders on the ground. But again, we've turned the corner. Prime Minister Maliki and his government and the average citizen walking the streets of Baghdad would like us to leave. We can leave honorably in 18 months. Their soldiers need to be empowered. Their soldiers and their police need to take over. We immediately can go to a support role, command, control, logistics. I'm not for advocating leaving the entire area. We're going to go back to Kuwait. We can possibly be in Turkey or Jordan. Listen, this is a sinkhole. We are spending $10 to $15 billion there. The Iraqis have $79 billion surplus. I want to see the Iraqis starting to take care of themselves, and we can start focusing on our own internal problems.
Thank you, gentlemen. That concludes round one. It is now time for our candidates to ask each other 2 questions. And you have 15 seconds for the question, 60 seconds to respond, and 30 seconds for a rebuttal. By random selection, Jack Kingston will ask the first question.
Thank you, Tina. Bill, you have accused me many, many times of being very partisan. Now, I have the support of the Democrat sheriff of Lowndes County, Eccles County, the Democrat Sheriff Curzon, the Democrat Sheriff in Long County, Cecil Nobles. The other night I had a fundraiser in Hinesville. State Representative Al Williams came, John McIver
Mr. Kingston, please ask your question.
Well, I just want to make sure you understand I have a lot of out-of-the-closet Jay Shaw, State Representative. They all support me. Do you have any elected Republicans who have endorsed you?
The Republicans have been pretty hands-off to me, but I've had a lot of great endorsements. Mr. Kingston, in the USA Today 2 years ago called you the most partisan person in our House. In 2006, the Republican Studies Institute voted you the most conservative, which is the right wing of the right wing. That's unacceptable for a district. That's hurt our district. I've been endorsed by General Wesley Clark. I've been endorsed by West PAC. I've been endorsed by Veterans PAC, Veterans for Military Families for Progress, the AFL-CIO, and I just got endorsed by the Business Journal and Report, which goes to every chamber, which goes to every small business administration and every economic development authority. It's going to send shockwaves when people read that tomorrow morning.
Rebuttal, Mr. Kingston?
Second question, rebuttal? Or,
Rebuttal to
I just want to make sure. So you're saying I'm the partisan guy, but you don't have any elected Republicans who have crossed over, but I have a lot of Democrats that support.
This is just
me.
your rebuttal. You can't answer,
Oh, okay.
okay?
Sorry,
right.
Bill. I don't understand. But, well, let me just say, we just heard it. He has no Republican over the aisle support. I have named specific real live Democrats who are supporting my candidacy. This is a district that wants more than rhetoric and partisan politics. And I'll tell you, being called a conservative member of Congress isn't a criticism in the 1st District of Georgia. As you know, we want less government, lower taxes, and less bureaucrat interference in our life.
All right, thank you very much. Bill Gillespie, now it's your turn to ask Jack Kingston your first question.
My first question to you, Mr. Kingston, is what have you done to prepare this district for the 21st century economy?
Oh, well, number one, I have led the way on alternative fuels, as you know, with the introduction of the DRIVE Act, co-sponsored, incidentally, by Elliot Engel, a very liberal Democrat member from New York. And what that bill does is it pushes conservation. We call for the abolishment of Saturday mail delivery. We call for a tax credit for people to get hybrid vehicles and flex fuel vehicles so that they could use less gas mileage. We've worked for innovation. The University of Georgia right now, because of funding that I've directed to them, is looking at alternative energy from sorghum, from algae, from sweet potatoes, from watermelon. And I've called for energy exploration in America, offshore. And I know we have a disagreement with that, but I think that Katrina and Gustav and Ike that roared through the Gulf and battered hundreds of oil platforms and that did not cause an environmental impairment, that shows me that we can drill for oil successfully in America offshore on the east and west coast and bring down the cost of gas. And I think that's very, very important for the constituents.
Okay, we're going to move along with the rebuttal from you, Mr. Gillespie, if you'd like.
Most definitely. Mr. Kingston's been in Congress 16 years. After 16 years, he's had a lot of influence. I've had lots of Republicans that say, Bill, you're a great guy. Send me your bumper sticker when you win. As for what has gone on in the 21st century, I am running as the 21st century candidate. It is time to get rid of analog 20th century thinking and move to the 21st century. Every time Mr. Kingston talks about alternative energy, he has not backed that up by voting for it or appropriating money for it. Thank you.
Your time's up. Now, Jack Kingston, you may ask Bill Gillespie your second question.
Now, you were claiming earlier that you were a PhD. My sister's a PhD. My father's a PhD. I come from a family of educators. I'm the only one with an undergraduate degree. Everybody else has a graduate degree. I don't see how you can, in good conscience, accuse me of all kinds of things and then go around telling people, as you did in Hinesville August 7th, that you had a PhD in immigration law. And then you had it on your webpage up until 10 days ago.
Your time is up. Please get to the question.
I think I know what the question is. If there's any misconception, I have never told anyone that I have a PhD. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Studies. I went on and got a Master's degree in Environmental Studies. I went on and got a History degree in Military Studies. I went on for a PhD. I studied 2.5 years full-time at the University of Maryland. It was in Cultural Geography with a specialty in immigration. I am finished all the coursework. I defended a pre-proposal. I did all the comprehensive exams. It's a technical term called all but dissertation. Mr. Kingston, you have to find better staff people. That is an embarrassment. You also said I didn't get the General Douglas MacArthur Leadership Award. I have the Secretary of the Army giving me that award in front of 1,000 people at the Command and General Staff College. You said when I was a professor at West Point that I didn't win an orienteering NCAA championship. I have a trophy this big that says NCAA championship 3 years in a row.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. Mr. Kingston, you're ready for rebuttal now?
I have the greatest staff in the Congress. They work very hard on veterans issues, Social Security issues, passport issues, and you can attack me. Do not attack my staff. And in fact, if you were successful, I would recommend to you for the good of the district that you consider hiring some of them because they get the job done. But let me say this. You had it on your webpage that you were a PhD. I'm the son of a professor. I represent Armstrong Atlantic University, Valdosta State University, just to name two. And you don't go around telling a professor you're a PhD if you are not a PhD.
ABD.
The ABD
Your
stuff
time is up.
is a silk. That's not a technical
Mr. Kingston,
term.
your time is up. Okay, Bill Gillespie, you may now ask your second question of Jack Kingston.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Kingston, this election is about trust and transparency in government. What have you done as a congressman to improve government openness and transparency?
Well, number one, I don't go around claiming that I'm a PhD if I'm not a PhD, just, for openers. I mean, I don't go around saying I played professional football or that I was an astronaut either. And let me apologize to you on the Douglas MacArthur Award. The only thing we had to go by was their web page, which did not list you. And the only thing we had on the NAAC, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, was the fact that they don't list orienteering as an NCAA sport. So, I will apologize to you, but I'm giving you a specific reference on that. Once I talked about the bailout, since you and I disagree on that, when that bailout bill was finally written, we posted it on our webpage at about 10 o'clock that Sunday night so that everybody can do it. I have one of the better web pages in the United States Congress. In fact, I won a Polly Award for open and transparency, putting voting records out there, explaining to people when I would support a bill, when I would not, and the reason why I would not do it.
Mr. Gillespie, this is your time for rebuttal.
Let me talk about what we really need. We need a government that is trusted and a government that provides transparency and decision-making and a government that provides timely feedback. Mr. Kingston turned in his FEC financial disclosure statement late. When you are invested in large financial companies, when you have taken $700,000 in campaign contributions, you owe the voter transparency. You know better than that, the 16 years in Congress. You've also taken money from ProLogic while they were under indictment.
And your time is up, sir.
We need
Mr.
transparency.
Gillespie.
We need change.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. That concludes our second round of questioning. For our third round, we return to our panel of journalists who will ask questions of the candidates of their choice. The candidates will be allowed 1 minute to respond. As moderator, I will determine if the opposing candidate will be given 30 seconds for rebuttal. We begin this round with a question from Ben Young.
Representative Kingston, we need more transportation in Georgia. I think that's something everybody understands, alternatives to the car. I just wanted to know, why have you voted against Amtrak so many times? What's your beef with Amtrak?
Amtrak is so heavily subsidized, it's not efficient, and we need to move it closer to a business model. Amtrak is not overly utilized in the 1st District of Georgia. As you know, we have the silver streak that comes right through Jessup, and I had probably one of the few members of Congress who's actually gone to Washington on Amtrak, but it is a very inefficient system. And when you talk about public transportation, though, and I also want to say this, there's only 2 members of Congress who actually ride a bicycle to work every day, a real commute, and I am one of them. I have worked for alternative transportation, also for mass transit. I've worked for CAT, the Chatham Area Transit System, to get buses. Also here in Atlanta, we've worked closely with MARTA. So I've done a lot in transportation, but also the thing I'm working on more than anything right now is a tax credit to get people into hybrid or flex fuel vehicles so that they can be affordable.
Well, you didn't quite answer my question about Amtrak. Wouldn't it be a benefit to connect South Georgia to Atlanta and to northern cities?
I think there could be a time when Amtrak could be used, but we're not there right now, and that's my opponent and I have a different agreement on a different view on this. He is proposing trains all over South Georgia, but the critical mass is not there, and as we all know, America has an $11 trillion national debt. The bailout bill was $850 billion, which my opponent would have supported. I voted against it. Part of what we need to do is rein in federal spending, and some of these choices are tough, but they need to be made.
Mr. Gillespie, you now have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
It's unfortunate. The time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining. We are in a crisis. We have no energy policy. 8 years ago, when the Bush administration took over, we had surpluses, and now $10 trillion. We've had a deregulation of the government, which is primarily the fault of Mr. Kingston and the delay leadership team, which he was a part of. What we need to do is invest in transportation. I will fix Amtrak. Savannahans can go to Charleston. Savannahans can go to Jacksonville. We're going to be able to go to Atlanta. We need to make public transportation a part of our economic stimulus package.
Moving on now, Dan Chapman will ask a question. Dan.
I would like to follow up on that, Mr. Gillespie. I've checked your website. You have quite a list of things you'd like to finance. I'm wondering, for example, you would like tax credits to send kids to college. You would like tax credits for alternative energy, for mass transit, for community colleges, et cetera, et cetera. How do you propose, in a very, very tight, the next administration, the next Congress is going to be money poor, how do you propose to pay for all these things?
You know, it's great to brainstorm. It's good to have a plan on the table. I know we're in some financial tough times. We need a bailout package that helps Main Street right now. When we invested in ROTC scholarships as part of the GI Bill after World War II, they came back sevenfold. It's time. If we invest in education, we're going to have better communities. We're going to have less crime. We're going to have people wanting to come to communities. It's time that we look at investing in skills for the 21st century. People going to trade schools, people going to college, it can only benefit us and put us ready in the 21st century so we can attract great jobs from around the world.
Thank you, gentlemen. Brandon Larrabee, it is now your turn to ask a question.
Representative Kingston, according to Taxpayers for Common Sense, a nonpartisan budget think tank, you requested more than $35 million in earmarks in the 2008 budget. Do you support earmark reform, and if so, why all the requests?
Not only do I support earmark reform, but I have promoted it and have the bill with the most co-sponsors on there that's been debated more than any other bill right now, 150 co-sponsors, I believe. Unfortunately, I can't get the Democrats to go along with it, but it's forced a dialogue. What we propose is having a definition that includes tax earmarks and trade earmarks, because right now the only earmarks you know about are appropriation earmarks. I think that we need to put them all on the table and measure them with the same stick. But I also, every earmark I've worked for, and 70%, by the way, Brandon, have been for the military, and 20% have been to the agriculture. And as you know, I'm on the Defense Committee and on the Agriculture Committee, and people do come to me, and they have ideas for, alternative fuel or better quality of life for soldiers, or MRAPs for the soldiers that is, a better up-armored vehicle in Iraq. And so I've worked on these things, but I've always done it on the subcommittee, full committee, and floor level so that it's in complete sunshine and that everybody knows it's in the bill and it gets Democrat and Republican support.
All right, we have time for one more question now, and Ben Young, you will get that question.
Okay. Representative Kingston, what's your vision of pretending that maybe we do get out of Iraq? What is your vision of a post-war economy in South Georgia, which is so reliant on bases right now?
Well, I think, number one, we still have to have a strong military, and I do hope that we get out of Iraq and Afghanistan. It'd be great to have these guys home. I do think the decision needs to be made by generals in Baghdad rather than poll-reading politicians in Washington or sometimes Savannah, Georgia. But I think that we have to have a vigilant military. Right now, I've brought our help. It's been a big team, but I've been on it to bring about $1 billion worth of military constructions to Fort Stewart. My opponent said a minute ago that Fort Stewart hadn't changed to 2000. I would like to give them a tour of it, and I would love to have shown them some pictures of what it was like before 2000, but that brings jobs to our area. I've also supported dredging the Savannah port. It's about 300,000 jobs that are related to the port. I've worked for that. I've also worked for Tybee beach erosion because tourism in our area is a big economic issue, and I've also worked for the agriculture community. We need to have low food, feed, and fuel costs, and agriculture is the key to it. And in my position on the Ag Committee, I've worked for that.
Thank you. And right now, we are out of time for questions. Both candidates for the 1st Congressional District will actually have 30 seconds for a closing statement. Bill Gillespie was randomly selected to make the first statement. Bill?
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I'm Bill Gillespie, and I want to be the congressman from Georgia's 1st District. I want you to remember 2 things about me. We're not set up for the 21st century. I'm going to bring modern jobs. Second off, I am the leader that is going to fight for you. It's time that the middle class and working America had a champion. Ladies and gentlemen, this election is about change, and it's about positive change. But to change, we really must change. I want to go to Washington as your congressman. I will work hard for you. I will be the champion of the middle class and working people. I ask for your vote on November 4th. Thank you very much.
And thank you, sir. Now Jack Kingston will give his closing statement.
You know, my opponent talks about change, but he supported the $700 billion bailout and $150 billion in pork barrel spending for it. He wants to kill No Child Left Behind. Here we are in a global economy. We've got to have our kids educated so that they compete all over the world. He wants to kill No Child Left Behind. He's against drilling offshore oil. Here we are paying $3 and $4 for gas. We need to use American oil resources. It's time that people in Washington realize how tough it is for the middle class. And I've worked for lower taxes and lower health care and lower fuel costs, and I will continue to do so if I have the honor of being reelected. Thank you.
And thank you, sir. Thanks to both of you again. That concludes our debate. We'd like to remind voters that the general election will be held on Tuesday, November 4th. Our thanks to the candidates and to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging tonight's debate. And for more information about the Atlanta Press Club, you may visit www.atlantapressclub.org. This debate will be archived on the Press Club's website. I'm Tina Tyus-Shaw. Thanks for joining us for this 2008 election debate.
This program was funded in part by a grant from the late Tom Watson Brown and by supporters of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thank you.